Hello, everybody, and welcome to the struggle. Man, I got a little frog in my throat. Sorry, the pollen and all that stuff. I guess let's try that again. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the struggle is not real. In this show, we deconstruct popular myths and limiting beliefs that hold entrepreneurs back, replacing them with more empowering perspectives and practical strategies. We ask the question that's right there on the front, right there. What if your biggest obstacles are just a figment of your imagination, or as Kristin likes to say it, the problem's not the problem. It's how you look at the problem.
Yes.
I am Mike Gandolfo. I am joined, as always, by the Queen of Coaching, Kristin Tabbert, and New York Times bestselling author, Michael Lennington. How are you guys doing today?
I think better than last week. The ice has melted. We have a ETA on power for our kids. The sun is shining. It's over freezing. I think life is much better this week.
Do they have gas up there?
Yeah, they have gas now. You are still sitting in line to get it, but they've got it.
Okay. So my experience is completely different than yours, Kristin.
It always is.
My week has been chaotic and stressful because we went out and we got two new dogs. One's a puppy.
Yes. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What?
Yes. That's what I said.
Thanks for putting me under the bus. I have people that would shoot me for knowing that we got more dogs, and I haven't conveyed that message yet, and here we are. Thank you.
Who are those people? Let's just call them right out here.
No, we're not doing that.
Well, you can blame it all on me.
What is the dog count now? I mean, I'm telling you right now, I said this with kids. I said, we have two kids, and being a basketball coach when we had kids, I was like, hey, two kids, we can play man-to-man. We get three kids, we have to go zone, and then they can overload. and I should have actually used that same analogy with the dogs. Like the third dog changes everything. And you guys aren't talking about having three dogs. Is it five now? 5 dogs.
Yeah. And 4 of them are GSPs, which if you know GSPs, it's like 2 dogs in one. So
man, I am just like,
well, there is a logical path that you can follow from having no dogs to where we are. It maybe isn't the best logical path, but it's sort of logical. And I can see how we got here, but we officially are now done.
Says you. And Kristin's like, with dogs.
With dogs. But horses, on the other hand, we've had up to 9 horses at once. And so
Chrissy's got a mutual friend talking about taking his donkey. And then there's another client that we just got referred to who's a goat farmer, and she's talking to them about these Nigerian dwarf goats or whatever else. And
nice.
I don't know. Like we'll be done in 3 dogs, but the chickens, the donkeys, and the goats, and we don't. I mean, I don't know.
What's happening with the donkey? I don't want to say names, but I'm curious about the donkey. We have space.
I know we don't.
Yes, we do.
No, it was a joke. She was out at our mutual friend's house, and I think he was being the way he normally can be, and was like, "Do you want to just take the donkey?" And of course, Chrissy's like, "Yes."
Okay, because I yes.
Actually, donkeys are good protection against coyotes.
Yes, they are.
Well, we have those. I'll tell you what, there's no question. And so there may be a logical path, Michael, for you all to get to 5 dogs, but was it a linear path? And we're going to talk today about how success is not linear. So today we're diving into a myth that has held entrepreneurs back for generations, the belief that success is linear. You know the whole story. You start at the bottom, you work hard, climb steadily up the ladder, and eventually reach the top. Or you had this great idea and you got this great business plan and you think you're going to put it out in the market and everything's going to be roses and you're just going to continue to have this incredible linear growth until you're just depositing millions in the bank, right? It sounds simple, predictable, and even comforting. But where does this idea come from? And more importantly, does it hold up in today's world? To understand this mindset, we have to go back to the industrial age. Picture this: factories humming, assembly lines churning out products with clockwork precision. This era didn't just revolutionize production, it shaped how people thought about success. Workers were expected to follow a rigid path, entry-level positions leading to promotions, raises, and eventually retirement with the gold watch. The linear model wasn't just a career framework, it was a cultural ideal. But it didn't stop there. Economists and policymakers took the concept and applied it to innovation itself. The linear model of innovation emerged as a step-by-step process, starting with basic research, moving through development, and ending with production and diffusion. It was neat, logical, and easy to measure. Yet, even as critics began challenging its limitations, the idea persisted because it fit so well with the statistical tools of the time. Fast forward to today, and we know better. Success isn't about being a straight line. It isn't an assembly line. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of detours. The gig economy has replaced lifetime employment. For many, entrepreneurship thrives on adaptability, and innovation often comes from unexpected leaps rather than steady progress. So why are we So why are we still clinging to this outdated belief? That's what we're here to unpack today. We'll challenge the myth of linear success and explore how embracing a nonlinear approach can unlock your full potential as an entrepreneur. Michael, why are we clinging on to this belief that success is linear?
Because we like to have mental models that describe reality. I think we like to know the cause and effect relationship between our actions and our results, and we have expectations for those things. If I take action A, I get this result. If I do it twice, I get double the result, or whatever the mathematical relationship is. And the reality is, though, back in the day, as you were describing, models worked better because things were more predictable. Change was going at a much slower rate. I mean, 100 years ago, the grandparents of those alive 100 years ago were living similar lives to the ones who were alive 100 years ago. But once the Industrial Revolution, as you were pointing out, and then the information age hit, there's just been so much volatility and so much change going on. It's difficult to have if-then models work as well. We are experiencing volatility right now this year based upon one man sitting in a chair that was different than the man was sitting in that chair 4 years ago. Whether you like that, for 4 years previous, whether you like the change or not, it's irrelevant. You can see the kind of volatility that gets created by one person pulling levers differently than the other guy did. And I think, there's an unexpected nature to reality today. There's a lot of unknowns. And I think it's like, I look at it this way. We're going through what I would call J-curve change, right? Where you kind of bounce along and everything kind of stays the same. And then all of a sudden, whoop, you get this exponential level of change growth. And that's what we're going through right now. I don't know if it's going to level out. I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Kristin?
I don't think it's going to level out. I think you may hit a little plateau, very, very minute plateau, and then there's going to be another big uptick. I think it's just, I can't see it leveling out.
It's interesting because if we're using that analogy, you see, we see some people who will immediately go to the conspiracy theory that it's all about just making sure that the transfer of wealth, that there's an intentional crash of the stock market so that the transfer of wealth goes to people who can afford to then buy up all the stocks when the stock market crashes. Then you get the idea of hey, you know what? I don't want to get too political in this one, and we got to stay in the success is not linear. But I think that at the end of the day, I think that this lever was pulled to see what the overall reaction would be. And I feel like there's almost there is 3 or 4 different scenarios that play out in order to get to the end result. What is that end result? Well, I mean, is it would you be okay spending 10% more on certain items because of tariffs if it meant that we had no income tax?
Right. I mean, it's hard to parse that out, isn't it?
Right. I would say yes. I would gladly have more expensive. I would pay the flat sales tax of whatever else and not have the income tax. Just even eliminate the stress of preparing my income taxes.
And the huge engine that we have to pay for to make sure that everybody's doing what they should be doing with their taxes. I mean, if you have a sales tax, it's happened, it's over, it's done. And I'm not again, this is not a political discussion.
Right.
But I think if you look at the efficiency of a system, when you have to have this governor or this thing on top of everything that hires hundreds of thousands of people to do all these little things and still can't get it right, maybe you could change the system and you wouldn't need that kind of huge, governor over the top of the thing.
Well, it also just, I think, plays to the complexity of of what's going on in the world in general. And so I'll change it up a little bit. We have obviously had just a massive amounts of rain here. We've had flooding, and last weekend after I talked to you guys, we actually had as the Kentucky Derby Festival, where I'm hyper involved with, had to pull the trigger and cancel Thunder over Louisville. Okay. Now there's ramifications of Thunder over Louisville that are massive, and people can say, "Oh, well, flooding's in the river and fireworks and an air show are up in the sky. Why can't we continue to still have those things?" And you just you lose the idea of really what Thunder over Louisville is, and how many different nuances. And to your point, it's so much more complex, Michael. Now it's not just an if this and then that kind of mentality. It's 700,000 people that come down to the riverfront. It's can the barges even handle the speed that the river's going at? It's all the gunk and debris that's washed ashore, even if the river were to descend, from a safety perspective. Though I drove by today, the lot where we would basically set up a sub police station was completely washed out. Couldn't do that. But there's $125 million economic impact to this event. Right. I mean, and there's people who use this event as a major economic driver for, it's almost like a Christmas to some retailers. So it's very complex. It's not, those decisions aren't made lightly. But I want to make sure we stay on topic.
No, but I think you're right though. It's just we have this need to make things simple. We have to have an understanding that can fit between our ears, and that understanding, it's a model of reality. But as they say, all models are wrong, some are useful. If you oversimplify, you miss the whole, why things happen piece, right? Yeah,
right. And I think the truth of the matter is where things apply to this conversation is you have a plan. We had a plan for Thunder over Louisville. The government officials had a plan for what happens with tariffs. You have a plan, and when that plan goes, you go into implementing that plan with optimism. We come up with a plan all year long for Thunder over Louisville that the weather is going to be fantastic and everything's going to cooperate and blah 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 and all these. It's you. And last year, basically, we almost got that. By the way, we almost got the perfect ideal situation. Well, how often does that really happen? Well, I've been involved with this event for a long time. It's been around for 35 years. It doesn't happen very often that it's goes exactly the way we wanted to go. Right. And so you have this, as we talked about in the show before, you have this uninformed optimism because you feel like if you paint the picture, if everything were to go as planned with no variables, this is how it's going to go.
And you're imagining all the positives of it. You're not bumping up against any of the negatives yet, right? You're just thinking about all the things that could be possible in a positive manner.
Right.
Yeah. I think in the beginning for sure. Right.
Yes.
And I think as you go through, and we go through 35 different renditions of putting on the largest fireworks show outside of China, which is what it is. So if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I didn't know all that was going on in Louisville, Kentucky. That's how we kick off Derby season, by the way.
Not this year, though.
Not this year. Largest fireworks show other than outside of China. Every year we get more and more educated so that when we go into the year, we can have contingency plans for we had a pandemic.
Yeah.
We had flooding.
Yeah.
We had 2 years ago, there was a mass shooting about 2 blocks away from where the venue was. The week before.
Remember that?
We were down there then.
I think yesterday was actually the anniversary of that.
Yeah.
You go through all of the you go through even other festivals who might have someone driving down a parade route or whatever kind of, so you start to build in, your planning gets better, right, Michael? As you kind of get aware of what those things could be, and but there's always going to be those costs, I guess, that you don't account for.
Yeah, unexpected things. And I think, when you think about it, there's always been those things. There's, the 1918 flu, and you go back to the plagues in Europe. There's always been these unexpected things that change everything, right? But the underlying system didn't change that much. What you're dealing with now is things that you didn't anticipate hitting this thing, but now there's communication everywhere. People online, and they're complaining, they're saying things. It's making politicians a little bit nervous. So I don't know, so you get maybe decisions being made based upon things that didn't exist 100 years ago, right? You may have still had bad weather, I'm sure you did, but you don't have all the modern things that exacerbate and kind of sometimes ameliorate situations like you're in. And I think that's what we're talking about here, because we are not able to keep up with the rate of change in the world. None of us.
Positive or negative, by the way.
Positive
right?
or negative, yeah. And change is just ramping up. And one of the things that is part of that change is AI, which is also, though, a way to kind of cope a little bit with the change, because if AI really is able to stay up to date on what it can grasp and what it can reach out to and as data, right, and that sort of thing, you can use AI to kind of help you navigate a little bit, but it's a different way of doing things, right? So, not change.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because when you were talking, I was starting to think about those positive innovations that happens. And then, like, sometimes as an organization who puts on the same event 35 years in a row, you get so kind of like, this is the way we do it, that you can ignore the innovation and that the stuff of that could actually help your plan go improve. You're kind of stuck in the rut, I guess, a little bit of when you could actually maybe be taking a massive leap up. So Kristin, tell me about it when you're coaching someone and they start their plan off and then they get hit with a reality of either it's not as easy as it is, or I didn't account for this one thing or whatever. They get knocked off a little bit because they go from this uninformed optimism to what we say informed pessimism. What does that look like for people and how do they react?
Okay, so that's a great question, Mike. So speaking more generally, when we hit the informed pessimism stage, that's where doubt begins to creep in. There becomes oftentimes a significant emotional downturn. And I think for me, when I encounter it with my clients, it is a almost tanking of their confidence. They begin to question their competence. I'm not capable of doing this. I want to go back and get another idea. The informed pessimism is it's where you go from kind of sliding down the hill, the valley of, towards the valley of despair to going off the cliff into the valley of despair. And so that's where you have to have conversations about, it's not your competency. It's more your confidence. We're bumping up against things that we didn't know. And so now we have to discover those. Can we overcome those? And that's where you really dig in to find tactical pieces that can overcome those emotional hurdles that then brings you out the other side of that valley of despair.
Where you're making decisions based off data and information and not feeling.
Yes. And we've said this, we talk about this all the time. If you do not do that and work out the other side of the valley of despair, you climb out where you came in and you go back to those, I want to get a new idea. Well, I feel good about that. It's a much happier place to be for the moment. But what it does is it begins to instill failure loops in you. You never complete anything.
I'm going to put it. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. You.
I want to paint a scenario here, and I'm curious to get both girls' take on it. But I'll start with Kristin. Let's say that I have a really good plan, and I hit some obstacles in that informed pessimism phase. But I pretty much deal with them and I get through them, and I start writing things out. How many times though do people just get in the valley of despair, and it's not necessarily like all the crap that they've had to deal with, but it's like they're not seeing the success as fast as what they thought they would see it.
That's very common in my world. And I want to paint a metaphor for you. We want what we want and we want it yesterday. Michael and I were watching a YouTube channel for entertainment purposes the other day, and it's about this old couple in Britain who they love narrow canal boats, and they navigate the canals of Britain. And so they're taking you through all these different canals that they're going to do. Well, there's one particular canal that they go on that they couldn't go around this. They call it a mountain in Britain. We'd call it a big hill here, but they couldn't go around it to build the canal. They had to go through it. And so this tunnel has twists and turns in it. So you're not going into the tunnel and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the day. You're going into complete and utter darkness. darkness. And this tunnel is 3 miles long, and at 4 miles per hour, it takes you a heck of a long time to get through there. And you can't see light. You have no idea when the end is going to happen.
So you have like complete darkness, like if you're in a Mammoth Cave.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. So that's kind of the valley of despair. You know there's an end result. You know you're going to come out into the sunshine, but when you're in it and you're in it and you're in it and you can't see it, even being able to logically tell yourself when you're on the boat, it's only 3 miles. At 4 miles an hour, it's going to take me 3 hours to get through here. We can anticipate timing on when we're going to get through this. But when you're in it, logic loses out, emotion kicks in, and you start to make changes based on those emotions rather than data.
Yeah, I mean, I think of it, you all have heard me give the analogy to our agents of the old-fashioned water pump, right? Like you never know how close it is you could be pumping that water handle, and a lot of people want to give up because they don't know how close they are to actually drawing water from the well.
Yeah. It may be just that one extra step. And we have so many analogies, so many stories. The movie Facing the Giants, the death crawl. I think that's one of the most poignant examples of just keep taking a step, and you're going to be in the end zone before you realize it, because you're focusing on the action in the moment. You're not focusing on how far you have to go. And our emotions and our belief in our physical limitations begin to kick in. If you're always looking at how far you have to go, you say, I can't do it. I'm not capable. But if you're just focusing on that next step, anybody can take just one more step. Anybody can do just one more tactic. And when you're focused on the action of the moment, the goal line sneaks up on you and you pass it before you even realize it.
Anything you want to add to that, Mike? Go ahead.
Well, I was just, I think something you said, Kristin, triggered a thought for me. And I saw that same episode where they were in that tunnel, and I'm claustrophobic, and I probably afraid of the dark too. But anyway, so the thing about that tunnel that's different than change in the world is that when you're in the tunnel, you can't just decide right now to get out, because you got to either back your boat up, right, and go backwards through a dark tunnel, or you stick with it and go all the way through. Stay in there, you can't get out. Right. So when we're doing change in our lives, we can always stop right now. If I don't like my diet, I can quit. If I don't like the work it takes to hit a certain level of income, I can quit. If I don't want to. So that temptation, that immediate release, that immediate pleasure competes with the longer term desire that we have. Right. And so a couple of things I was thinking of, and you probably have experience with this with your clients, but when you're because I've been there, I'm doing something, I'm tired of this crap. This is not worth doing, and you give up or you keep going. So, and I know you've got experience with your clients, but one of the things I think you can do is create certain consequences for yourself if you do get out of the tunnel before you should, right? The kind of thing where you tell people what you're doing things publicly, you're sharing with people that are going to see when you give up, if you give up, right? So that can kind of create that cloud of witnesses around yourself. The other thing though is that you, as you were saying, is you can look at the work itself as kind of fronting the benefit, because every time you run a mile, every time you lift a weight, every time you do the thing that gets you to where you want to go, you can see that in that action greatness, right? Because you're doing the stuff it takes to be great at anything. And so that kind of front ending the benefit a little bit by reframing the work, reframing the tunnel. It's hard for me to do that because I'm so claustrophobic, but you know what I'm saying? And so with your clients, and I'm Mike, this is more of an answer, not less of an answer, more of a question, but for your clients, Kristin, as you kind of go through that, what have you found that's helped people stay in that tunnel? And I know it's not the greatest analogy because you got to stay in the tunnel, but to stay on the program, stay on the exercise, stay on the execution of the tactics when they don't feel like it.
It's not celebrating the outcomes, it's celebrating the progress. Mm-hmm. Most people don't understand how to do that. And when you can start getting them to celebrate each day's progress versus the overall outcomes they're trying to achieve, you start to condition yourself. You start to look forward to doing the work, and there's, I had this conversation with a client the other day, create some gamification. There's no shame in gamifying your work. Give yourself a reward. Okay. and do it around things that you ultimately love and you're going to do anyway. So me, I'm going to go out and ride my horses, but I make it a game that says, unless I do this thing, I don't get to ride my horse today. And so it just creates this gamification that motivates me a little bit more to work more diligently and intentionally to go out then and do the things that I love to do anyway.
We might go a little long today, but there's something here that I want to tap into, because I think I like your all's tunnel analogy, but you guys have lived a real analogy. Okay. And I'm talking about hiking to the bottom of the freaking Grand Canyon and then coming out. And the reason why that's such a powerful analogy for me, and I was thinking about where it fits in my own, and I'm thinking Red River Gorge, which is not the Grand Canyon, but it still was hard for me, was you get to the base of the Grand Canyon, and don't get me wrong, you have some options. You could get airlifted out of there. And I think that was even thrown on the table at one point, right? That like we can get airlifted out. I guess you could choose to say, hey, I'm going to just live down here now. I don't I guess that's an option.
I like it. Tents are good.
I like it. We're just gonna stay right here. Like I hiked down. It was really hard, and hiking up looks worse. So
or I'm gonna float down the river.
Unless you like spiders and you're able to boil water, that's not really an option.
Okay, so
on spiders and dirty river water.
I mean, so when you talk about Valley of Despair, like
Literally.
let's talk about how it showed up in this Grand Canyon trip, and then what it was like when you actually got to the rim and got out of the Grand Canyon. Who wants to go first with that one?
I will. So, most people that know us know we went with two very close friends, and there's a whole lot to unpack to this in terms of thinking and being in the Valley of Despair, because I was there, but I didn't want to admit to anybody I was there, right? And Gina, she was having a hard time. And my challenge was getting out and going up. Hers was going down. That was what was hard on her. And so by the time we got to the bottom, we were having very real discussions about, can we do this? Because our uninformed optimism going into this was, I was doing it on a treadmill. I was doing the literal thing on the treadmill. 7 miles down, and it was going to be 15 miles out over the course of 2 days. Okay, so over 3 days, we were doing 12, 15, 20 miles at a time on our preparation hikes. So we knew we had this, right? It was going to be a piece of cake, and we can
rest. Uninformed optimism.
Oh, yes, it was. Well, about mile 3 going down, when your quads feel like they're just going to spontaneously combust, you start to wonder if you're going to be able to do this. Plus, you're carrying 35 to 50 extra pounds, on your frame. So we get to the bottom and we're just exhausted, absolutely exhausted. I was so physically exhausted to the point that I couldn't eat. And you have to eat to be able to get out of there. Couldn't eat, didn't want to eat, was getting yelled at for not eating and yelling at other people.
Not by me.
Shut up. But Gina and I walked off to go to the bathroom, and it's like, how are we going to do this? We immediately went to how. We don't know how to do this.
Well, don't go to the bathroom on the cactus. Oh, no. That's not what you were talking about. Okay.
No.
And snakes too.
So, and here's the thing. We even set up some safety nets going into this. It's a $10,000 ride out of the canyon. I don't know if anybody knows that or not. So if you want to take a helicopter out, it's $10,000. Did you know you can buy helicopter insurance for that very specific reason, so that you can now just make it a deductible of about $1,000? Okay. The way I was feeling that first day, I was willing to pay a financial price of $1,000 to take the easy way out of this.
Did you all buy the insurance?
Yes.
You did?
Yes, Gina bought the insurance. We had insurance on all of us.
But it's not just because you don't feel like it. You got to be like on your back, having a heart attack or a stroke or something. Because otherwise, everybody just be buying the insurance to get the flight out.
So anyway, there was that, and then from that came the conversation about, what do we know, right? Okay, the next 2 days, if we get a good night's sleep, we eat like we're supposed to eat. we can move at our own pace. Yes, we have a deadline of when we should initially be out of the canyon, but we can take it at our own pace. It's not a race, and we're doing the out of the canyon over the next 2 days. So we're here. Let's not move this. So we had those conversations, and then we started. Well, then we came out of the Valley of Despair, and we're doing okay. Then for the next day, for me, the Valley of Despair really kicked in, because going out was killing me. And our guide, Andrew, said something very, he said, look, you have choice to come to the bottom of the canyon. You do not have choice to stay here. You have to come out one way or the other. So that information was very instrumental in helping us to decide. But
well, let's just stop there for a second. It's so powerful. Like, you figure out really what you're made of when you realize that staying there is not an option.
Mm-hmm. You have to get out.
You have to get out one way or the other. You're going to pay the financial price, or you're going to pay the physical price. But
you're also going to pay an emotional and a mental price as well. Because for me, I'm an Olympian. I am competitive AF. And I did not want to come out of that canyon telling somebody I couldn't do it. I had to quit. I will quit when I die. I'm not going to quit of my own accord, or I will quit when somebody pulls all the other avenues from me. There's no other path forward. That's just who I am. So I wasn't going to quit of my own accord. I was going to die trying. And I got to tell you, by the third day, I literally felt like I was dying at a few points.
But you get to a point when you're coming out, right? You're walking the path. And for me, I mean, again, I'm going back to just like, I've got to get out of the Red River Gorge, not the Grand Canyon. It's like, that's why I love trails at Switchback. It's like, I just got to create this leg of the Switchback. I can take a rest. I can do whatever else. Then I'll look at the next leg of the Switchback. But I had to break it down to Switchback length by Switchback length. And know that, okay, now I got to tackle this section of the Switchback.
Mike. Yes. So for me, Scott Wurzbacher gave me a tool, an idea that helped. It was that death crawl and facing the giant. Sure. Yeah. Just give me 5 more yards. Just give me. So Scott said, do this. Take 10 steps, take your walking stick and tap it. So I tell people I made it out of the canyon 10 steps at a time. So I would walk 10 steps, and I was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, tap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I would also give myself permission. If I can get to 10 sets of 10, I can stop and try to catch my breath. And that was my system. That was my process. And it got me out of the canyon. And you asked a question about what did it feel like when you came over the rim? Well, everybody except our guide and Michael, who stayed back with me, but Scott, Tim, and Gina, they were what, Michael, an hour ahead of us?
Not quite that much, but
it was pretty close to it. So, and this is where accountability partners and support come in too. This is a whole nother layer. They waited at the finish line, did not cross the finish line until I got there with them. They waited on me so we could celebrate together. And I walked over. So there was that overwhelming piece, having that kind of support and encouragement. But then when we stepped over that rim, it was just almost like utter disbelief met reality. I didn't think this was going to happen. And here it is. And it crashed. I released physically in a way that took me absolutely by surprise. I sobbed like I hadn't sobbed since my mother's funeral. And it was just such an overpowering release. And then after that happened, the euphoria set in. It's
sense of accomplishment. Like, you probably felt like you could do anything at that point, right?
After that, I did. I felt like I could do anything.
I just a couple of things I want to add to that story, and be real quick, Mike, because I know we're already over. But the other thing you don't say is that you have Lyme disease, which creates air hunger. It makes it difficult for you to breathe. You were not just hey, I didn't prepare for this thing. You killed yourself preparing for it, but you can't control that. So you were fighting through physical limitations that none of the rest of us experienced. But I want to just say one thing because I'm really proud of you for that. But I want to say one thing. The guide you mentioned, his name was Andrew Cross. And he was awesome. He was just one of the best folks we could have climbed the canyon in and out with. He was helpful to Kristin. He was there helping us and all that. But he was hit by a drunk driver about a month and a half ago, and he lost his life. And he had a channel on YouTube called Desert Drifter, and it is an awesome channel. He's a climber. And he would go out to the Southwest and just kind of go and look for artifacts and ruins and things like that of the folks who'd been there before us. And he didn't take anything. He didn't tell me where he was going, but he just shared with it on video. And he had a huge following. So if you kind of like watching something like that, that's really great show. It'll help out his wife, Evelyn, who does rely on some income from that site. And now that her husband's gone, it's difficult to maintain it. So go check it out. He's got a lot of videos, a lot of fun. Andrew Cross, Desert Drifter, YouTube.
I love it. All right, I want to get to one last thing before we go, because again, this plays back into the idea that success is not linear. And walking up that trail, going switchback to switchback, is very similar to, like, you don't realize when's the last switchback going to be. I even think that when you're going up in the Grand Canyon, you don't really realize where the rim is, right? Like, you really don't.
No, the perception is so skewed, because when you look up, you can't identify what a mile is, right? And the last, what is it, mile, you go up 1,500 feet in elevation just in that last mile. You have no idea. There's no perception. You can't. There's no reality to what you're seeing until you are actually in it.
So that. Go ahead. Were you going to add something?
I was just going to say, after hearing the story, I probably shouldn't have made you carry my pack too, hon.
That did not happen.
But I mentioned it last week that we were probably going to talk about this book a little bit called Mastery. And in the book Mastery, George Lennard talks about that success is really a series of peaks and plateaus. And you're walking on that switchback, you're walking on a plateau. You don't know how long this plateau is going to be. You feel like you're not making any progress. You're making progress because you keep moving forward. You're taking action, which is so vitally important. Don't stay still. Take action. Even if it's wrong action, because you learn from it, you take action, and you don't get stagnant. And eventually you're going to get to this point where you have the euphoria of having hitting some sort of peak, of getting, of having some sort of massive growth. And then and that massive growth is going to eventually get to the point where it challenges maybe the systems that you have in place. It challenges the structure you have in place. And so your business actually can't handle the peak that's occurring. And it starts to just dip a little bit. And then that's when you make the adjustment and you start riding the next plateau, which is higher than the previous plateau, higher than the previous peak at even, not the peak that you just came off of, but the peak before. And then it's a series of plateaus and peaks. Mike, do you agree with that assessment from George Lennard?
I think I call it run rest a little bit, if I follow what you're saying, because I think, you are on a learning curve. You get up to a point where you kind of plateau, and that's where you're kind of assimilating, you're kind of understanding how the system works at this new level, and you kind of codify it. And then you approach the next. So it's like walking up a set of stairs. And I think that change, not rest, but change, plateau is a powerful way to grow and assimilate. Because if all you're doing is growing, you're not going to really get that kind of the grok of what it is, right? You don't get fully competent at it. It doesn't become part of your natural behavior. You're just kind of learning, and you never codify it. You never solidify it.
Well, isn't that what the informed optimism stage is? That's where we are continually adapting and learning and changing and growing. I mean, that's where real growth happens all throughout the emotional cycle of change. Yes, we want to reach success and fulfillment, but that you get to that, you've got to go on at some point. So you want to keep dipping back into that informed optimism stage now, because that's where your growth and learning comes. I think that's what creates those plateaus and those peaks and those plateaus and those peaks.
It does, but I was talking more about stage 5, which is the success and fulfillment stage, where you're through it. It's now part of, it's just part of what you do, right? So it's like, I learned how to ride a bike. I fall down and go about the bottom, and I don't like, I'd like walking better, whatever. But I pushed through and I learned how to ride a bike. Now I don't have to learn how to ride a bike again, unless I want to race, right? So I can always take the next step. But it's that assimilation phase that I was talking about. But I agree with what you're saying, Kristin. The real growth, when you have this kind of informed optimism, that's where it's going to work, and you still got some way to go, but you feel that energy, right? And it's kind of like the last switchback where you can see the top really is where those people are. That's where I'm done. Yeah.
And I think that, I guess, let me ask it a little bit different way and put it into like a real world example. Kristin, have you've worked with people over several 12-week cycles? Okay. I know you've worked with people 12-week cycles, and they probably have 12-week cycles that kind of show progress, and they're making growth, but then they hit one 12-week year where they see a massive growth. Mm-hmm. Does that happen? I mean, do you see where it's
it does. It's very cyclical. I've got data I can show anybody. It's usually around the third or fourth 12-week year where that, they're getting the system down. They're understanding how it's designed to work. They're understanding themselves and how they work within that execution system. Mm-hmm. And so then they really begin to fly with it then, because they've learned how to identify, the most high value tactics, not the nice stuff. They've confronted the decision to pay the price to do those tactics, not lean into comfort and do the things that make them feel good. So about the third or fourth 12-week year, they have a massive breakthrough. And then what happens after that is even more interesting. They believe that they have arrived, they've mastered, and they don't need help. They don't need a coach. They don't need a guide. They can do it alone. And they go off on their own. And usually about week 4 to week 6, they completely derail off their 12-week year plan. Then they try a second one, and then a third one. And then by the next fourth, so we're looking, they'll say, look, accountability is a big piece to that's missing. So accountability partners, a WHAM partner, a WHAM group. Those are almost critical to ongoing consistency and success with short cycle execution.
All right, I think we really nailed this one today. So lots of good stuff out there. Remember, if you are facing challenges in your growth, success is not linear. There's things that you have to pick up, that you've got to learn, that you've got to absorb, but keep taking action, keep collecting data, making those decisions based off that data. And you will get to that point. And I truly believe, I've said it before on the show, that most successful people, they want it quicker. They don't feel like they're where they should be, that they know that there's another level. And lots of times success feels like you're slowly failing more than it does feel like you've ever arrived. So just keep on plugging away. Anything else you all want to add before we put a nail in this one?
No, I think this one was good.
Yes. Next episode will be that multitasking is not efficiency. That's what we'll be talking about. We'll see you next time. This is The Struggle is Not Real. Take care, everybody.